So a doctor and a rabbi were having a bit of an argument about the value and importance of their respective careers. They went around and around for a while until finally the doctor said, "I deeply care for all my patients, and they turn to me in their hour of greatest need." The rabbi said, "I do that." The doctor said, "Well, I provide life-saving help even when they don't have insurance or money to pay." And the rabbi said, "I do that." Taken aback, the doctor then said, "With all due respect, Rabbi, you don't have patients. You don't do surgery, and insurance is not something that you have to deal with." And the rabbi said, "Oh, I know that. I was just saying that just like you, I like to say nice things about myself." I wanted to start with that little quip I got from Rabbi David Wolpe, because the arguments and debates are common in our world. And so is framing our positions in a way that make us look good. We craft narratives that are true, at least from our perspective, and at the same time, we prepare arguments to counter the narratives of those who disagree with us. Unchecked, unfiltered by humility and kindness, we might also denigrate the integrity of those who see things differently. Indeed, there is a distinct lack of humility and kindness in the current political and social debates. It is true that passionate and even violent disagreements have plagued humanity in every generation. It is also true that sometimes those divisions can spin horribly out of control. Indeed, there are extremists and radicals who, it seems, in every generation seek to exacerbate divisions and take advantage of a weakened society. And such is what we are seeing today. Therefore, we need to consider what we can do to bring calm and stability. On this morning of Rosh HaShanah, the beginning of the year 5786, this time of teshuvah, reflection, repentance, and renewal, we assert that we can help build a world that rests securely on a foundation of mutual respect, wisdom, and compassion. From our earliest teachings, Judaism has demonstrated the importance of acknowledging the value of different sides of an ideological dispute. The Talmud records how the teachers of Beit Shammai debated with those of Beit Hillel. As leading schools, they felt a bit of competition with one another, and their debates were certainly passionate. Their respective positions reflected heartfelt convictions, and yet they also agreed to see the value and the authenticity of both sides. It was declared in the Talmud, "Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chayim." These and those, both are the words of the living God, but the halakha is in agreement with the rulings of Beit Hillel. So why were most of the disputes, if the Talmud recorded them, why were most of the disputes then cited on behalf of Beit Hillel and not Beit Shammai? Well, the Talmud says, because Beit Hillel taught both sides with kindness and with modesty. They studied their own rulings and they studied the rulings of Beit Shammai. Instead of focusing on who is right and who is wrong, Judaism teaches that we must try to find the value, the significance in the arguments and positions of those who disagree with us. Yes, it is a tremendous challenge to make an effort to truly appreciate the significance of the perspective of those with whom we disagree. And it goes without saying that today, too few are making the effort to listen to those who do not share their political or ideological perspectives. We can point fingers at the causes of the poisonous divisions that are plaguing society. There are a number of obvious candidates. The tone set by our political leaders, the corrosive influence of social media, professors who choose indoctrination over education, the manipulation of the internet by parties that are trying to sow division and plant seeds of revolution. All are guilty, and so are we. We're guilty for either contributing to the harmful chorus or by being duped by the voices of hate. In America, we have seen assassination attempts against President Trump and former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. We were horrified by the assassination of Minnesota's Speaker of the House, Amaretta Hortman, and her husband on June 14th, and most recently, the shocking murder of the 31-year-old conservative leader, Charlie Kirk. Extremists from both the far left and the far right have perpetrated these crimes. Leaders from both political parties have been targeted. We are all victims, and we are all, in part, responsible. Yes, our political leaders and so-called influencers post vitriol and spew venom. But evil speech would be for naught if we ignored those awful messages, or better off, deleted them. Instead, there are too many of us who forward hurtful and even hateful messages. Impressionable minds are being poisoned by hate speech, propaganda, blatant falsehoods created by local and international terrorists who seek the destruction of the United States, Israel, and even Western culture. Yes, blame the leaders for their part, but let us also look into the mirror. Willingly or passively, we have enabled and empowered the purveyors of hate and division. That situation certainly has grown since October 7th, 2023. The murderous attack by the Palestinian Hamas against Israel and the subsequent response by Israel has led to a world in chaos. Over the past 2 years, the conflict in Gaza has grown to be one of the great challenges facing the Jewish people, both in Israel and in America. To put it mildly, there are differences of opinion concerning Israel's conduct during its wars with Palestinian Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Specifically, should Israel end its campaign to remove Hamas from Gaza in order to win the immediate release of hostages? Are Israel's actions disproportionately harsh and causing too much suffering among the Palestinians? Can Israelis trust that the Palestinians will ever be peace partners? Have Israel's actions affected the increase of anti-Semitism in the United States? There are heartfelt but conflicting opinions in the Jewish community. Can we see the noble argument in the other? As you know, the Palestinian Hamas murdered some 1,200 innocent people in Israel. They kidnapped 251 others, and they continue to hold dozens hostage. It is also true that Israel's efforts to defeat Hamas and Islamic Jihad and free the hostages has led to a horrific death toll. The loss of life and suffering on both sides has been heartbreaking for both Israelis and Palestinians. And as we mourn, it must be remembered and acknowledged that every single death and incident of suffering was caused on October 7th, 2023, when the Palestinian Hamas terrorists and their allies attacked Israel. Hamas not only initiated the war, they also intentionally used innocent Palestinians as human shields, firing rockets from schools, hospitals, and civilian neighborhoods. They built hundreds of miles of tunnels to hide their fighters and their weapons, but they did not offer shelter to their fellow Palestinians. Hamas and Islamic Jihad stole food and provisions and starved their own people for propaganda purposes. Hamas has made it very clear in their publications, proclamations, and its actions that it is violently opposed to the very existence of Israel. Unfortunately, there are too many Palestinians and others around the world who have as their primary objective the destruction of Israel. And despite this, our Jewish hearts ache for the suffering of the Palestinian people. And we also acknowledge that certain Israeli policies have exacerbated the situation. As you know, I am a strong pro-Israel Zionist. Susan and I are extremely proud that our youngest son is an Israeli and was served in the IDF. Nevertheless, we are also respectful and sensitive to the cries of frustration from the many Jews in Israel and in the United States who protest the actions of the current Israeli government. While much of the opposition in Israel is politically motivated for the next elections, any of you who have been to Hostage Square in Tel Aviv know that the protests are heartfelt and express the sincere longing for an end to the war. We have also seen many in the American Jewish community voice opposition to Israel's policies. Some of those who harshly criticize Israel are manipulated by anti-Israel Middle Eastern nations and anti-Semitic groups. Too many of the protesters are caught in the passion and the romance of protest chic. But we also need to acknowledge that some good-hearted and caring Jews disagree with pro-Israel narratives. I studied the positions and engaged with some who are harshly critical of Israel and have noted that they cannot be painted with a broad brush or blithely dismissed. Each is unique. Some profess an ever-evolving but conflicted love of Judaism and Israel. Others have all but removed themselves from our Jewish family. Nevertheless, we must remain willing and even eager to engage with them. Yes, they have doubts and questions, but in Judaism, doubts and a willingness to self-examine and challenge ideas are not weaknesses. They are our strengths. In addition, Judaism teaches the importance of acting to prevent the suffering of others, because all are people of God. All life is sacred. The concern for the stranger, for the other, is a core Jewish value. We should all express sorrow for the Israelis who are suffering and for the Palestinians as well. And yet it is important to note that many who criticize Israel do not give sufficient weight to the ominous threats and the constant barrage of violence made by her enemies. Israel has been, as you know, under extreme international criticism and pressure to accede to the demands of Hamas and allow the terrorist gang to remain in control of Gaza. They want Israel to surrender and have threatened her with increasing boycotts and humiliations. A growing number of nations, as we speak, have prematurely announced their recognition of a Palestinian state. Either wittingly or unwittingly, they have strengthened Hamas, empowering it to refuse to release the hostages and to lay down their arms. They have bent to hostile poles in order to heap opprobrium on Israel. The press, in its own cynical way, piles on with inflammatory and slanted reporting. But as Golda Meir said, I would prefer to live and have bad press than to be dead and have a beautiful eulogy. Any proposal that leaves the terrorists like Hamas in power in Gaza is not a peace proposal. Rather, it is a cruel hoax that will only lead to more suffering. Yes, good and thoughtful people disagree. Therefore, we need to listen respectfully to those who have different points of view. Let's discuss. Let's debate. Let's listen intensely with one another. Perhaps we will have to agree to disagree, but at the very least, we will not disregard one another. We will not act dismissively toward one another. And it is essential for us not to break off relationships, not to cut another person off simply because we disagree. The situation in Gaza will, God willing, eventually subside into history. The damage from a lost relationship could last a lifetime. So we need to educate. It's important to point out that 25% of Israeli citizens, are Muslims. Most are hardworking citizens who have made significant contributions to Israel's growth in nearly every field. The vast majority of Israeli Jews do not want Palestinians to suffer. They work together in businesses, in schools. They shop together. Unfortunately, that feeling for the well-being of the other is not reciprocated. Note that the Palestinian supporters do not chant two-state solution. You do not hear them chant two nations for two people. Rather, they chant, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Free of whom? Well, Jews, of course. And though some of their clever publicists claim, well, that's not really what it means, the Palestinian chant in Arabic is absolutely clear. Itbach Yahud, they scream. Slaughter the Jews. While the New York Times and NPR won't report the murderous intent of the Palestinians, Israelis get the message loud and clear. The pain that American Jews feel is not limited to the anxiety of the situation in the Middle East. What we feel is the skyrocketing rates of anti-Semitism. No doubt some of that anti-Semitism has been caused by the protests and riots from those who seek to destroy Israel. No, not everyone who criticizes Israel is anti-Semitic. As I have mentioned, tens of thousands of Israelis regularly protest the policies of Bibi Netanyahu and his ruling coalition. So no, criticizing Israel's policies is not anti-Semitic, but it is most certainly anti-Semitic to call for the destruction of Israel, the home of over 7 million Jews, our ancestral homeland, and it is anti-Semitic to attack Jews. Susan and I have been harassed while we were simply walking in Greenwood Village with our pro-Israel shirts on. And Greenwood Village, as you know, is not a center of radical behavior. We refuse to be intimidated, but like you, we were stunned by the murderous attack in Boulder just a few months ago. Jews had gathered to raise awareness for Israelis held hostage by the Palestinians in Gaza. Mohammed Solomon attacked them with Molotov cocktails, killing an 82-year-old Holocaust survivor, Karen Diamond. Mohammed was not interested in peaceful dialogue. He and so many more like him who are anti-Israel are also clearly anti-Semitic. They are violent. They seek the destruction of both Israel and America. That some Jews ally themselves with them is unfathomable. Yes, elu ve'elu, this side of the debate and that side of the debate, both are sacred opinions and values, but some opinions, some positions are so abhorrent to be then beyond the pale. They're shameful. However, there are those with whom we must engage. They are our family and friends. Even though we may disagree, it is important for us to listen to each other. It is possible to bridge the gaps of social divisions, but that takes a willingness to learn together. Let us discuss without emotional outbursts. Let us thoughtfully review facts and respectfully consider heartfelt perspectives. Anti-Semites are attacking the Jewish people by trying to undermine those sacred bonds of family, faith, and community. Anti-Israel forces are trying to erode the bonds of the American Jewish community with Israel. We must not let that happen. Likewise, political radicals are trying to tear America apart, and we must not let that happen. At the core of Judaism is an appreciation for life's complexity. We embrace complexity and instinctively object to simplistic binary explanations. We are taught from the earliest age to question, to test, to examine, to review, and then, even then, to acknowledge that the issue at hand deserves even greater scrutiny. Therefore, as we stand humbly at the beginning of the new year, we understand that, with God's help, we have a say in how the future will unfold. In our long and proud history, we have witnessed empires come and go. We have faced tyrants and bullies in every generation, and we know that with God's blessings, we will survive every challenge. Today, the Jewish people, with a proud and independent Jewish state of Israel, is stronger, more prosperous, better educated, and better politically connected and secure than any time in our 3,500-year history. This is not a time for us to be afraid. Rather, this is a time for us to use our strength and blessings to stand up against anti-Semites and bullies. On this Rosh HaShanah, let us pledge not to add fuel to the fires of divisiveness that are flooding the internet and this nation's body politic. Let us rally together as that dynamic family we know we are, ever learning, always arguing, ever curious, always hopeful, always loving. Ken Ratzon. May it be God's will.